Hello and welcome to another amazing part of What If a Tiefling Were in One Piece? Your Dose of Apple wrote this amazing story. Please support them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Now let's dive in. Yawning, Carrie stretches from her doze. Smacking her lips a few times, she spares a long look at the cause of her waking, seeing her captain rejoicing over his newly repaired hat. Carrie puts on a small smile at seeing the mended straw hat. Beside her, Zoro opens one eye and asks, "You awake yet?" "Unfortunately," Carrie admits, though she doesn't sound frustrated by any means, though it sounds like Luffy's happy again, so I'm all right with it. "How kind, second mate." Zoro hums. Well, any relaxation she was having was promptly gone as Carrie threw up her hands and shouted, "I'm not the second mate." "Yes you are," Luffy calls, frowning, hat back on his head where it rightfully belonged. Nami also gives Carrie an odd look as she points out, "Luffy did introduce you as his second mate." "Ugh," Carrie shouts, dropping her arms and just looking generally miserable. "I don't see why this is such a problem." Zoro mutters, "Is it that you're not first mate? You jealous? You can be first mate on weekends?" Luffy offers, as if it were a matter of dual custody of the position. "No, I don't," Carrie grumbles, head in her hands as she looks generally pathetic. She drags her hands down her face and mutters, "I'm a warlock. If you want a good second mate, then get another fighter. Or a paladin. Hells, even a cleric would be better. But I don't want any of those." Luffy says as if he knows what any of the classes meant. "I want you to be my second mate, so I chose you to be my second mate." He said it so flippantly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Shouldn't you have someone stronger to be your second mate? Like another Zoro?" Carrie says, like she realizes it was a fight she would soon be losing. "Why would I need two Zoros when I already have one? Plus, it's better to diversify the crew." Zoro points out, "The more spread out and diverse in abilities a crew is, the more likely you are to cover your bases." Nami agrees. "I doubt most crews have access to anyone, a magic why?" She says it like it's a question, and Carrie nods weakly in acceptance of the description. Nami nods along and continues, "So it makes more sense for you to have a higher role in the ship hierarchy, means you're more of a threat in the grand scheme. And you can make people throw up." Luffy says, pointing out her ray of sickness as if that were the piece that sold him on her worth as a second mate. "I just think you could do better," Carrie says as a last-ditch attempt to save face. Luffy just frowns at her with a look that questions her intelligence. "I wanted you, so you're second mate." Carrie just sits there wallowing, "Fine." She lets it rest for now. "If it's any consolation," Nami says from nearby, making Carrie lazily eye her, "you are deserving of the part. I mean, from what I've seen, you're a good fighter. You sure gave Buggy a run for his money at least." Carrie slides her eyes to the side, not opting to say more, and ready to continue fighting otherwise, though her hackles fall when she catches sight of something on the horizon. Sitting up, Carrie leans forward and squints at the blob in the distance. Is that an island? Luckily, the conversation was dropped in favor of her discovery, the three reeling to see what Carrie spotted. "Oh hey, good spot, second mate." Zoro hums, amused when Carrie deflates. "Land ho!" Luffy shouts, all glee at the prospect of a new island. "Yeah, we noticed," Nami grumbles, rolling her eyes. "I missed land." Carrie groans as she basks on the sand of the island. "It's literally been less than 24 hours since we were on land." Nami points out, only to be ignored by Carrie, who continues sinking into the earth. "Get up, you're embarrassing us." Zoro mutters, kicking some sand at Carrie, causing her to scramble up and glare. "To who, Hilltop?" "No one's here," Carrie pointed out. Nearby, Luffy was examining their surroundings with a curious expression. "Is there a village here?" "Yes." Humming, Nami glances at the map they'd apparently been following, much to Zoro and Carrie's surprise, before answering, "Yeah, seems like a small village is based here. Maybe we can get a ship here." Luffy grins, eyes sparkling at the prospect. "How about we think about that after we first solve our food situation?" Carrie offers, arms folded, taking in the sights alongside her company. "Not that I hate our barrel of apples, but if we continue to eat nothing but apples for the next few weeks, I might commit mutiny." "Is now a good time to point out the guys watching us?" Zoro asks, pointing out the four boys at the top of the nearby hill. Three of the four bolted at their pointing them out, but the fourth shakily stood his ground. Carrie tilted her head to the side as she stares at the boy standing there, eyes locking onto the comically long nose. Only to further be bewildered at the boy's stammered attempt at a speech. She and Zoro share a side-eye. "I am the great Captain Usopp, leader and chief of security at this island. He puffs up his chest, all pompous poise that Carrie thinks might be more than a little fake. It's best if you don't try attacking this village or else I'll send my dash. He fumbles for the barest of moments before his expression smooths out with a cocky grin. My 8,000 followers will be after you. You're lying, aren't you? Nami asks, dry as a desert. I've been had. Usopp blurts, any inkling of confidence gone. Then he seemed to realize just what he'd said as he pulls at his coiled hair. Why did I just say that? Luffy starts laughing and Carrie can't help but join him, grabbing at Zoro's shoulder to stay upright. The swordsman just rolls his eyes. Don't underestimate me. Usopp comes back to himself, pointing at them all with what remained of his confidence. When his pointing led to Carrie, he faltered for only the barest of a moment before he audibly swallowed and threw a thumb at his chest. I'm the Honorable Usopp and... He trails off before any fight that remains deflated from him. He slouched in on himself, rubbing the back of his neck with his face tinted red. You guys aren't here to hurt the village, are you? Nah, Luffy shook his head, not really our style. Oh, thank the maiden. Usopp exhales, looking like an immense weight was taken off his shoulders. Yeah, we just followed a map here. Nami explains. Please tell me there is a restaurant or something here. Carrie begs. I don't know how much longer I can go with just eating apples. You're begging for anything aside from fruit, and you opt for a salad? Carrie defensively said salad closer to herself, glaring at Zoro. Shut up and let me enjoy my food. Piled at the table, Carrie was comfortably sat beside Luffy. Nami and Zoro across from them and Usopp, who'd elected to come along, sitting at the head of the table, having dragged a chair up to sit with them. The fifth member of their table had been quiet, watching them eat and chatter with themselves, watching Luffy with bewilderment as the boy ate more food than anyone his size should be capable of. To be fair, Usopp piped in, apparently braving past his alleged fear, a salad is an odd choice for a filling meal. I ordered some bread too. Carrie defends, forking another mass of salad into her mouth. Bread and salad, Nami muses, sipping on her drink. What a combo. Is this bully Carrie day? Carrie whines. Carrie is interrupted from her further whining by Luffy slinging an arm around her and pulling her into his side. You can eat whatever makes you happy. He takes a massive bite from the turkey leg he was attempting to decimate. Thank you, Captain, Carrie says pleasantly, only wincing slightly at the turkey leg before going back to her meal. So, not to pry, Usopp drawls, earning attention again. But, who are you guys? We're pirates. Luffy smiles, though his words only earn tired glares from the nearby patrons, much to Nami, Zoro, and Carrie's confusion. Luffy puffs up his chest with deserved pride and declares, I'm Captain Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm going to be king of the pirates. He then points to his other companions. That's Nami, she's our navigator. No, I'm not. Nami says flippantly. Luffy continues to point out his companions, unperturbed. That's Zoro, he's the first mate and he's going to be the world's greatest swordsman. Zoro looks like he's trying to come off as nonchalant, but a well-placed kick from Carrie results in him looking more like his usual self. Carrie snickers into her palm as she is soon introduced to Usopp. And this is my second mate, Carrie, she's a warlock and a tiefling and she's gonna... Luffy pauses, face scrunching as if he is only realizing something for the first time. His head whips around to Carrie, startling the warlock into dropping her forkful of lettuce. What's your dream? Dream? Carrie asks confused. Your dream. Luffy says insistently as if Carrie was the odd one. I dunno, Carrie answers earnestly. I mean like, maybe go on an adventure? Her face scrunches as she tries to think, or just vibe. Luffy scrunches up his face. That's a weird dream. Carrie throws up her hands. Well, I don't know. I'm sorta just shooting whatever comes to mind right now. It is kind of a shit dream. Zoro mutters. Carrie gasps. Betrayal. Not to break the conversation topic here, Usopp starts, earning attention again. But, why are you here? Aside from food, I mean. Luffy answers promptly, we need a ship. Luffy picks at some of the meat on his turkey leg. Plus about, his face scrunches up thoughtfully, like 8 more crewmates? So more companions and a ship. Usopp surmises, rubbing at his chin, sounds like a big adventure you're heading out on. Know someone who could help us with our conundrum? Nami asks, resting her chin on her hand as she bats her eyes at Usopp. Carrie has to duck her head to hide her amusement. Subsequently, she doesn't catch sight of Nami's glare. There is, one person you could ask. Usopp seems nervous about the admission, twisting his hands anxiously and looking to the side to avoid staring at them. Though I wouldn't put all your eggs there if I were you. The owner is sickly, very ill. Near bedridden, it wouldn't do her any good if pirates came knocking at her door. She lives in the big mansion on the hill? Zoro asks without thinking, earning stares. He looks back at his companions in bewilderment. What? Seems obvious, doesn't it? Oh, would you look at that? Usopp Cress, making all four gathered around the table look to Usopp. The boy is doing a poor job of trying to hide, leading their attention elsewhere, as he's staring at his bare wrist as if there was a watch there. Then he slaps said wrist and looks up at them, sweating enough to make him thoroughly damp. Seems I forgot my scheduled meeting. Right now, today. Huh. His expression only grows more plainly pathetic as he abruptly stands, chair screeching behind him. Nice to meet you guys, but I gotta go. Then he is sprinting out of the little restaurant like his life depends on it. The remaining company can only stare after his exit in bewilderment. Luffy just sort of laughs in amusement. You gonna eat that? Her captain asks abruptly, making Carrie look at the boy in bewilderment. Seeing her confusion, Luffy points to the plate where Carrie has been picking out the steak in her salad. Carrie stares for all of 5 seconds before shaking her head, to which Luffy eagerly pounces on her plate, gobbling the meat down. You one of them vegetarians? Zoro asks. They're called vegetarians, you heathen. How the hell did you get it that wrong? Nami stares at the swordsman in sheer disbelief. Zoro just sort of grunts, resulting in both girls staring at him with expressions begging him not to be an idiot. Don't care. Zoro shrugged, folding his arms over his chest and leaning back into a seat with a nonchalant attitude. All I know is they eat vegetables. And like cheese. I do like cheese. Carrie nods seriously, though I still eat meat, just not a fan of most. She picks at her salad absently. She stabs one stubborn bundle, saying, I like fish. Fish is good. Well, there will be a lot of fish once we're officially out on the sea. Luffy is chowing down on the remaining steak on the plate. He spares a look at Carrie. I don't know how you don't like all meat though. He gestures towards the bone that remained from his turkey leg. It's so good. Never had good meat experiences, I guess. Carrie shrugs, though she pauses in her attempt to finish her salad when she notices 3 small boys sprinting into the building. Guys dash. Before she can continue, all 3 boys search around for spotting their posse and immediately congregate around their table. Hey, they all demanded, what did you do with our captain? Who? Carrie asks without thinking. The 3 boys look like they're about to answer, though their tongues catch when spotting just who'd ask. In an instant, all 3 are stiff as a board before they are screaming and dashing out the building the same way they came. The door swings shut behind them as if the odd little interaction had never happened in the first place. Well, that was rude. Carrie grumbled, stabbing at her salad in frustration and taking an equally large mouthful in an attempt to stifle her annoyance. While she chews on her mouthful, she spares a look at her companions. Do I really look that scary? They're just being brats. Zoro waves off her worries. You look like a pushover. Thanks, pardon? Well, go figure. Carrie mutters, hand braced on her hat as she looks up at the large gates that block entry to the mansion. It can never be too easy, can it? It wouldn't be a real adventure if it came easy. Luffy points out with a grin. Pursing her lips, Carrie slowly ends up nodding with the logic. Yeah, that's fair. Well, I prefer the easy route. Nami points out, folding her arms in annoyance when realizing that getting into contact with the mansion's owner wouldn't be a walk in the park. Maybe we can just ask the guards to let us in. She gestures to said guards on either side of the gate. Carrie stares at them and they stare back at her with hands braced on their weapons. Carrie winces. Yeah, I'm going to be real, I don't think they're the meet and greet type. Zoro scratches at his chin and asks, could you teleport inside and sneak us in? Misty step. Carrie corrects without thinking, though does give it some actual thought. I mean, maybe? She scratches at the back of her neck. Though I gotta be within 30 feet to use Misty Step, so chances are they'll spot me disappearing all of a sudden, and likelihood is they'll check inside the gates for me first. You have limits on your magic? Zoro asks, looking at Carrie curiously. Unfortunately, Carrie reminds them, not to mention that I can only use those sorts of spells a couple times before my mana goes kaput. Mana? Nami asks. Carrie is close to answering but is ignored in favor of Luffy calling, boring talk later. He throws his arms out and they all watch as they latch onto the top of the gate. I'm gonna go meet the owner of the mansion. Wait. All 3 cry, piling on top of the eager captain before he suddenly lets loose to go flying over the fence. Not to mention with his 3 companions still attached. The screaming they use must be comical as they fly over the gate and towards the manor. Though, at the moment, all 3 unwilling companions on the sudden flight just feel terrified. Luffy is cackling like a madman, unaware of his own mortality, and everyone else is vividly aware of their reality. It isn't long before they finally crash land right outside the mansion. The 3 unwilling companions look downright miserable as they attempt to regain their bearings. Luffy looks like he's done this 1,000 times before and recovers easily. Frankly, Carrie wants to strangle the boy, but is only prevented from doing so by Zoro declaring that it was unbecoming of a second mate to kill their captain. "I'm going to kill him," Nami declares, apparently not having the same hang-ups that Carrie and Zoro have. "No, you're not." Zoro and Carrie in tone, though Carrie with a bit more regret. Luffy just laughs. Pardon me?" A voice calls from above. All 4 of them tilt their heads back to catch sight of a youthful face peeking over a second-story window. She looks concerned. "Are you all right?" "Huh." Luffy, who had taken a bit to realize where the voice originated from, finally peered up and found the source. He smiles brightly at the young lady. "Yeah, we're all right." "Speak for yourself," Carrie grumbles, standing to her full height and rubbing at her side. "I think I threw out my hip." "Hips grow back," Zoro says flippantly. "No, they don't," Carrie says back, phrasing it in such a way that suggests she is asking it on behalf of Zoro. The swordsman just rolls his eyes, like he found the gesture annoying. Carrie weighs whether or not the same dishonor would fall upon her for strangling the first mate. "What are you doing here?" A voice calls from above, making their attention slide to the hanging tree where Usopp was perched. The boy looked beyond bewildered at their appearance. "We came to ask for a ship," Luffy said gleefully. "Wah, Usopp is floundering from where he is perched on his branch. "Did you not listen to me about not coming here?" Luffy tends to tune out anything he's not interested in. Nami calls up, to which both Zoro and Carrie nod in unfortunate agreement. "You met them before, Usopp?" The girl in the window asks, looking at the boy curiously. The expression that passes over Usopp's face can best be described as panicked, though it smooths out into a smug confidence a few seconds later. "Of course." He makes a broad gesture towards the 4 still peering up at them. "These are the 4 new members of the Usopp Pirates." Carrie raises her arm as if to be called on in class. "I didn't agree to that." Zoro does the same, joining Carrie. "I didn't either." While Usopp gets a look of betrayal, Luffy just holds onto his hat and says, "We have a request." That clearly catches the attention of the girl in the window, who perks up. Luffy puts on a big grin. "We need a... And just who do you think you are?" A man saunters up from around the side of the mansion as if appearing out of thin air. He's all poise and grace, but there is a distinctive something there that makes Carrie's hair go on end. She shuffles closer to Zoro, glaring at the man in all his cocky glory. Zoro spares her a glance, noting the caution, and elects to settle one hand on the hilt of his swords. "Coming in here, sending the guards into a panic, talking about pirates breaking into the manor grounds?" His tone that of snobbish indifference, like this whole situation was above his position. Carrie did not like him on principle. "Klahadore," their lady in the window cried, looking just as alarmed as they did at being bombarded by this man. "It's nothing to worry over, they're friends of Dash." "Ah, Usopp." The man waves off the girl's words, further making the troop bristle. "Crawling in here again, spreading lies?" "They aren't Dash." The boy's expression goes through a slew of emotions before settling on annoyance. Without breaking a sweat, he slings himself off his branch, landing on the ground in a crouch. He straightens up to give Klahadore a neutral expression. "I was just giving Miss Kaya stories and company. Something to pass the time." "Oh, I'm sure," Klahadore says, just as someone who is very much doubting would. Which story was it this time then? The island on the back of a turtle? Or perhaps another regarding your army of 8,000 men? Usopp's fists clench imperceptibly. He folds his arms to hide the tick. "Nevertheless, I cannot allow you to stay here, not someone with a father such as yours, that's for certain." Klahadore goes to inspect his nails like he's bored. Carrie's fingers stretch, itching for a spell. Zoro thumbs at his katana. Nami's hands are twitching like she wants to deck the guy. Luffy looks curious. "That's enough, Klahadore," Kaya declares, glaring at the man. The man goes to ignore Kaya again, but Carrie can't really help herself. She said that's enough. So what if she used a little thaumaturgy to make the word echo a little louder? It certainly got the man twitching and turning on her. Usopp even looks alarmed, though his own surprise smooths out into something more grateful when realizing that they were backing him. Klahador's alarm smooths out quickly. He hides his slip-up by adjusting his glasses. I will not ask again, he says, tone eerily smooth. Leave the premises now. At least he was backing down on the verbal abuse front. Usopp looks like he wants to lay into the guy, and frankly all of them are more than looking for an excuse to pummel the snob, but as it were they needed to play it safe. Luffy shares a look with his crew, still until they were given a reason to move. Though Usopp finally deflates, looking away with grinding teeth. He makes a clicking sound in the back of his throat before declaring, yeah well, you're not worth my time anyways. It's a pathetic excuse, but no one can really blame him considering the happenstance. So he turns and just starts walking away, though pausing when Kaya yelled, see you later, Captain. It's a sweet thing and it melts something visually in Usopp. Usopp turns, calls something back, but no, Klahadore interrupts, earning glares from those still present. No, you won't. Usopp just grinds his teeth and marches away. Well, that could have gone better. Zoro mutters. No shit. Carrie mutters, earning a glare from the sharp-dressed asshat. Carrie glares right back and she grins at his subtle flinch. Brushing off his coat, Klahadore attempts to gain his bearings. That request was not limited to the liar. He spares a look at all four of them. That goes for all pirate filth. But we just wanted to talk with Kaya. Luffy bemoans. Well, that was before you illegally trespassed. Klahadore says, now I will not say it again, leave. Luffy looks like he wants to start a fight, still try his best to get his way, though is prevented from doing so by Zoro's sharp eye. It's not worth it. Zoro says, quickly earning attention. Carrie at his side looks like she is more than happy to ignore that recommendation. Though Zoro continues, we can see about getting a boat somewhere else. The look their captain gives him can only be described as imploring. He just stares his first mate down, gaze heavy. Then he turns his attention to Carrie. Eyes just as searching. The spell that had been crackling to life in Carrie's hand is quickly put out with a clench of her fist. Carrie just closes her eyes and sighs quietly. Then she lifts her head and says, not worth it. And that makes Luffy's decision sound. Nodding at his first and second, he turns to Kaya and gives a big smile. As if that seriousness had never been there to begin with. Well, we'll see you later, Kaya. Then he turns and starts marching. Zoro, Nami, and Carrie followed without thinking. Once they were safely outside the gates, Carrie groans, that guy was an asshole. Yeah, I wanted to punch him. Luffy admits. We can always go back and get the jump on him. Nami suggests. All four of them picture their preferred means of getting the jump on the butler of the house. When Luffy snapped out of his dream beatdown to gasp, Usopp. He looks at his companions, all three staring at him in bewilderment. His dad's a pirate. Oh yeah, Carrie drawled, squinting as she recalled the mention. What do you think that was about? Seemed like it was something big by the way he was talking about it too. Who knows? Zoro shrugged. This was apparently not enough for Luffy, who started vibrating in place. I'm gonna go find him and ask. And before anyone could jump on him again, Luffy was bounding off at a speed that would make teleporters gawk. Why couldn't we get a normal captain? Nami groans. Carrie is on her like a hawk. I thought you said you weren't a part of our crew? It seemed Nami didn't notice her own slip-up as she starts sputtering as she fumbles to say a defense. No. She crosses her arms across her chest petulantly. I'm not part of your crew. I'm here on contract. Contract? Zoro says, slow-growing grin coming to his face as he realizes just what Carrie was seeing too. Is someone getting attached? Shut up. Nami barks, going red in the face. Carrie and Zoro just laugh while Nami flounders to change the conversation. And you, she points at Carrie as if pointing at a criminal, don't act like you're any different with your weird hang-up on being second mate. At the mention of her role, Carrie's laughter diminishes, though forces herself to hold a smile. Yeah, well, I'm trying now, right? Her smile diminishes a little, still not sold on it, but I'm trying. Yeah, about that, Zoro says, leaning against a nearby fence post. What is with that? Huh? Carrie asks, pausing when seeing they were coming to a stop. She turns to Zoro while Nami goes to sit on the fence itself. Your weird aversion to being a second mate. Zoro says, like the first time I get, it can be a bit of a surprise. But it's gone on for a while, and even if you're trying now, you still seem reluctant. Carrie thins her lips, crossing her arms and looking away from them. She glares at the ground and kicks a rock in the path. The first and second mate should be strong, they're the captain's right and left hands and they protect the crew. That's a lot of responsibility I don't think I'll be great at. I get protecting the crew, I mean duh, but what happens when I'm out of heavy-hitting spells after 2 turns of combat? I'll be a liability. The tiefling frowns as she wallows in her self-pity. Doesn't sound like good second mate material to me. With Carrie still not looking at either of them, Zoro and Nami spare a look at each other. Before Zoro finally says, "Then work on it." Carrie gives him a baffled look and he raises his hands to get her to further listen. "If you're worried about protecting our crew, about not being, I don't know, enough, then strive to get better. I've seen you use your quarterstaff and I know you're shit at it, but you could work on honing that first. Who gives a shit if you run out of your spells if you're still able to beat someone's ass the old-fashioned way?" Carrie thins her lips and looks away again, continuing to glare at the ground. "Plus at least you're not alone." Zoro points out, "If you need someone to train with, I'd be happy to toss you around." "Okay, well that solves the fighting angle, but what about my magic?" Carrie looks at Zoro, a bit more lax in her posture. "Well, I don't know shit about magic," Zoro admits, "so that's on you for the most part. But it can't be that much different than training with a weapon." Carrie is again quiet, fingers running over her arms. Then she takes a deep breath and finally mutters, "You're being serious about this?" "Dad." Zoro nods. The tension lasts just a smidge longer before Carrie lets out the breath she'd been holding and caves in. "Okay," she starts. "Okay. Fine, alright, you've sold me." Then, because she had to break the tension, Carrie teases, "You're a lot wiser than I gave you credit for." "Well, duh, that's why I'm first mate." He says it with a grin, teasing back, and it earns a playful glare. "Now are you done with your little pity party and ready to quit whining about being second mate?" Carrie holds her glare for a bit longer for that comment, but her shoulders slump as the tautness they've been unknowingly holding is cut. Carrie dips her head and sighs quietly, Yeah, I'm done." She looks back up again to share an intense look with Zoro, "But I want first mate title on weekends." Zoro snorts, and Nami's own tension bleeds out into a pleased smile from where she'd been watching. Carrie puts on a crooked smile of her own as Zoro grins at her, "You wish, hornhead." He doesn't even blink when sliding down to sit on the ground, propping his arms up without much care. "We'll both work to get stronger so that we can always be the protectors of our crew." Rolling her head, Carrie slowly nods, "Agreed." Any further conversation was interrupted by screaming. Heads turning in confusion, they watch a screeching Usopp run straight by them, not even braking as he full tilt sprints right towards the town. He doesn't even pause to wave as they just catch the tail end of his screaming. Irates are coming. Everyone evacua dash, and then he is too far for them to listen. The three stare at the faint dust cloud that remains from his presence. Did anyone else see that, or? Yep. Probably something we should. Yeah, probably something we should be worried about. "Hey, are those the kids that screamed at me earlier?" Carrie asks, squinting against the sun. Nami squints too. "Huh." She raises a hand to block out the sun. "Yeah, pretty sure those are them." The three kids came running up to them, a distant scream crescendoing into something very close and very loud. They looked like they were about to stop and beg them for something, but caught sight of a smiling Carrie, who unfortunately had a damn near villainous resting smile, and sprinted past them. Zoro, Nami, and Carrie just watched as the kids sprint by while sputtering and screeching their heads off. It wasn't until their screaming was dwindling that they properly realized what had happened. Slouching forward, Carrie looks miserable. "It was me, wasn't it?" "Yeah." "No, idiot." Nami slugs Zoro in the shoulder, earning a yelp. While Zoro rubs at his new bruise, Nami drapes a comforting arm around Carrie, easing, "They're just kids, they don't know any better. Rika didn't point and scream at me." Carrie mumbled, still looking miserable. "Who's Rika?" Nami asks, losing any sense of comfort. Zoro rolls his eyes. "Rika was a little girl. And those three are little brats who follow a liar around like little ducklings." Folding his arms, Zoro nods, seemingly to himself, "Take it from me, kids are dumb." Brushing aside the fact that Zoro was clearly trying to offer comfort, Carrie gives him a long look. "You'd know from personal experience?" "Yes." "Hey." Zoro glares at Nami and Carrie, snickering. Yet before the swordsman could further bark out something, they are all interrupted by the sound of jogging. They all look and see a teary-eyed Usopp walking down the path, seemingly coming back from the mansion. Which, hadn't he ran past them for the village? "Since when did you go back to the mansion?" Nami asks. Seems that startled Usopp out of whatever trance he'd been in, as he notices just who was in front of him. He is quick to rub a wrist over his eyes, ridding the watery sight. With one big sniffle, he begins bravely, "I dash," then immediately stops, blinks rapidly, and his whole expression crests over into horror as he points past the three of them and shouts, "You're alive?" Zoro, Nami, and Carrie all turn to see where he's pointing and, Sweet divine. Carrie jolts away from the sudden appearance of her captain. Luffy just stands there and Frog blinks at them. Shit man, what the hells? Carrie rests a hand over her heart and hopes she doesn't suffer from a heart attack at the captain's sudden appearance. Zoro and Nami look equally off-put by the boy appearing out of nowhere. I've been here the whole time. Luffy says. No the hell you haven't. Nami barks. Never mind that. Usopp dismisses them, still thrusting his finger at Luffy as if it will help to answer his questions. How the hell are you alive? I saw you die. I just woke up. Luffy says, picking at his nose. Usopp looks like his whole life is imploding in on itself and Nami at least takes pity on him then. How about, she draws slowly, we head back down to the boats and take a breather and talk through everything that's happened? She steps up to Usopp and rests a comforting hand on his arm. Sounds like you have something important to say. Usopp's expression went through a plethora of emotions, before just settling on resignation. With a tired exhale, he nodded along. Yeah, let's head back to the beach. The sun had just started to dip beneath the horizon before they set out, and by the time they reached the sandy shore, the moon was just starting to rise and the stars came out from their blanket of blue. Gathering around a sat Usopp, they waited for the story. It takes a moment, but soon Usopp begins. Because I lie all the time, no one believes a word I say. Usopp rubs at his wrist, where a bit of dried blood can be spotted. Even so, the fact that those pirates are going to attack tomorrow? Sorry, Nami interrupted, looking startled. Pirates? Usopp blinks at them in confusion, then turns to Luffy. You didn't tell them? Tell us what? Nami asks slowly, turning to Luffy with what can only be assumed is a look of murder. For what it was worth, Luffy appears confused by the question. It was as if they could physically see the gears turning in his head as he thought over what they could be talking about. Though soon he seemed to come to his conclusion as his eyes widened and he said, Oh. Don't just say oh when you realize something and not tell us, you idiot. Zoro yells. Luffy blinks. Then it takes him a few more seconds before he finally says, Klahadore is actually a pirate. He's what? They all shout in alarm, Usopp with his head in hands and Luffy just looking sort of empty-headed. With an overdrawn sigh, Usopp explains, they called him Captain Kuro, his real name. Apparently he's been playing the long con and has been trying to hook his claws into Kaya's family to get the fortune before he... There is an audible lump in his throat that stops him from speaking. It takes a few seconds for Usopp to swallow past the lump and say, anyways, I tried to warn Kaya but he beat me there and he convinced her I was lying if it weren't. He stops again, this time looking frustrated. Everyone thinks I'm a liar. It's said quietly at first, slow and deliberate, before he raises his head to look more determined. I tried to warn them but no one will believe me. They think it'll just be another normal day, another one of my lies. His expression hardens and he looks frighteningly determined. And I'll fight the pirates off by myself if it means those villagers can live with my lie. I'll do everything in my power to make it to where it stays just like that. A lie. They may not like me, he rubs at the dried blood on his arm. It catches Carrie's attention and she narrows her eyes at the sight. But I was born here, I love it here. I want everyone to be safe. I can't just sit back and watch everyone be killed because of my lies. There is a hitch in his voice and he looks away sharply, tears threatening to spill. The crew stares at Usopp for an indeterminate amount of time. Then finally Zoro cracks a grin. Well damn, the liar isn't the coward he came off as. Huh. Usopp sniffles, looking up in surprise. That guy's been asking for someone to rock his shit, Nami points out, then her expression smooths out into something more greedy, not to mention the treasure they're probably packing on their ship. I'm gonna kick his ass. Luffy straight to the point as always. Really? Usopp asks, growing more and more surprised. Carrie rolls her eyes and puts on an amused smile. Yeah man, we have your back. Zoro nods towards Carrie as if to say ditto. That settles it then, Luffy grins, we're gonna beat that guy's ass. Usopp's whole expression wobbles and it looks like he is seconds away from bawling his eyes out. So Carrie saves him the effort by strutting forward and announcing, we can't do anything until we make a game plan, plus you look roughed up from your day. She points at his bloody wrist. How about we take 10 then reconvene to make a plan of action? And I can address your wrist while we're at it too. It takes a minute for Usopp to realize that his wrist is sort of banged up and it wouldn't hurt to get it looked at. So he opts for just nodding. Carrie sits down right beside Usopp while the others linger elsewhere. Luffy screaming about food and bolting for the barrel of apples while Nami and Zoro chase after him to be sure he doesn't eat all of their stockpile. Carrie glances at the wrist and the nervous boy before pointing and asking, may I? Whoa. Oh yeah, here. Usopp holds out his wrist for Carrie to take, and she takes it with all the gentle tenderness a wound deserves. She overlooks the injury before sparking a prestidigitation in her palm and giving a quick run over the dry blood to clean off the mess. The golden light dances over Usopp's wrist and wipes away the dried blood and grime, warming the skin with gentle caresses. Usopp's breath catches as he watches the sparkling lights glitter and wrap around his wrist in ethereal beauty. Never once does it threaten to hurt, only brushing and cleaning until Carrie twists her hand and the golden light fades. Whoa, how did you do that? Carrie is drawn away from her careful look over to stare at Usopp blankly. It is only after a couple seconds of silent contemplation that she realizes he hadn't seen her cast any spells yet. Ah, Carrie voices, I can do magic. She twirls her hand around to summon a few brief sparks at the tips of her fingers. Usopp watches with an almost childlike wonder. Wow. Usopp breathes, in no way scared as per what his personality suggested. He blinks away his awe slowly, though there is still a lingering interest there. That's incredible. I didn't even know magic like that existed. Snorting, Carrie shook her head. It doesn't really exist here from what I understand. I'm sort of a weird exception. It's super common where I'm from. Just not out here. Really? Usopp asks curiously, earning a nod from Carrie. Is that also why you, Luffy said you're a, tiefling, which I assume that's why you have horns and a tail and, he draws off nervously, but seeing that Carrie is still patiently staring, he just asks, is that why I've never heard of tieflings before? They're common on your island? Her instinct was to correct the island comment, but she figures that was just a losing battle. So she instead offers a smile. Sort of, it's a bit of a long story. The basic gist is I can't go back there anytime soon. She glances back to the arm and runs a tentative thumb beneath one of the wounds, noting the way Usopp flinched and murmuring an apology before turning her head and shouting, Nami, have any more of those spare bandages? One of your gold coins and you get the roll. Nami shouted back. Deal? A couple seconds later and Carrie was fumbling to catch the roll of gauze chucked at her head. Saving face like she hadn't almost been sucker-punched by bandages, she turns to Usopp and dips her head towards his arm. You alright with me treating this? Yeah. Usopp says, surprised. Of course, you're already, yeah. Smiling, Carrie begins wrapping the arm, occasionally offering an apology when Usopp visibly winces. It goes on like that for a bit, with Carrie gently humming a tune with no clear harmony, and Usopp quietly watching. But then, so what other magic can you do? Carrie looks up in surprise, seeing Usopp shyly looking away from Carrie as if to hide his honest interest. There is a tentativeness there too, like he's anxious that he's going to be yelled at for asking. But Carrie just puts on a big grin and says, finally someone's interested. Not that I'm one to judge, Carrie drawled, staring at the grease-slicked slope, but shouldn't they be here by now? Maybe they overslept? Zoro guessed, scratching at the back of his head. Overslept? Carrie asks, looking at the swordsman in disbelief. They must be shit pirates if they overslept their own invasion. Hey, you asked and I gave an answer. Don't act like an ass. Zoro glared at Carrie. Shut up for a minute. Nami barked, appearing to listen in on something in the distance. Her brows furrow the more she listens. I swear I can hear someone shouting, go from the north. To the north. Usopp whispered, looking horrified. There's no way. I swear they said they'd meet here, I think they said, Oh sweet divine, did we just prepare at the wrong shore? Carrie asks, looking exasperated as she dismisses her quarterstaff. Usopp just gave a pained laugh as answer. Which way are they attacking the village from? Luffy yells, looking like he's preparing to charge in the first direction he's pointed to. Usopp flounders for all of 5 seconds before he's pointing north and saying, it'll take 3 minutes if you head that way. The landscape is essentially the same and it'll take me only 20 seconds to get there. Luffy yells as he begins sprinting in the direction Usopp pointed. While Usopp swears and begins panicking over their failed preparations, Carrie grinds her teeth and starts after Luffy, calling over her shoulder, I'll make sure he doesn't do something stupid on the way there. Meet you soon. I cannot believe Huff your ass ran Huff all the way to the ugh my lungs, the village. Zoro glances over his shoulder on his run as he watches his captain and struggling Carrie sprint into view. Oh hey you made it, he calls, slowing to a jog to meet their pace. His eyes slide to the painfully out-of-shape Carrie. You good there, Tails? Shut the hells up. Carrie is wheezing and is more than a little afraid she's gonna collapse by the time she gets there. It was pretty obvious how Zoro was fighting off a laugh. Carrie just sort of glares at him, strangling her urge to shoot the bastard with a ray of sickness. The swordsman just looks back forward, maybe in an attempt to spare Carrie the embarrassment. We really need to work on your stamina. I'm gonna, sweet divine above, kick your... Hey, is that Usopp? Luffy shouts, interrupting their bickering. Both Carrie and Zoro quickly look forward, finding the boy laid prone and being approached by cat-themed pirates. Is that Usopp getting his ass kicked? Zoro corrects. Carrie just makes a vague noise of misery that isn't too dissimilar from a dying goat. Dibs on those guys. Luffy says, launching himself towards one of the groups. Zoro, about to run in and join him, is interrupted by Carrie slapping his back and immediately feels his adrenaline double. He turns to see Carrie curled over, bracing herself on her knee and gasping for breath. Her hand that had been braced on his back slides off to go help support herself. She gives him one thumbs up and continues to catch her breath. The swordsman just rolls his eyes and jumps into his own group of enemies with renewed vigor. A kind of renewed vigor that raised flags. So by the time he finished beating pirates within an edge of their life, he turns to Carrie, who has summoned her quarterstaff to use as a crutch. The hell did you do to me? Resistance. Carrie says, flapping a hand at him weakly. It helps to, She takes a long gasping breath. Resist. Zoro fills in. Sure yeah. Carrie forces herself upright and shuffles up to stand with the captain. When the hells did he show back up? Whatever, and first mate, both of whom cut a threatening figure, and herself on Zoro's far side looking more like a rag doll on its final string. She squints at the downed pirates and asks, Damn, no one left for me? You were too busy sitting on your ass. Don't slack next time. Zoro grouches. Carrie just looks bullied. You're late. Nami called from where she was standing over a downed pirate, foot on the back of the guy's head. You tripped me. Zoro barked, looking pissed. While the duo started up their spat, Luffy and Usopp started going at it too, screaming about which way north was. Carrie just wallowed while leaning on her weapon crutch. Though, her pause was drawn away when she caught sight of the remaining pirates at the bottom of the hill starting to reconvene. Without really thinking, she lifts her hand at the most audaciously dressed out of the crew. She was assuming they ran on the gaudier the outfit, the higher in the hierarchy mindset, and allowed sparks to dance across her fingertips. Sit your ass down, she cried, followed by a focused, eldritch blast. The crackling red light sparks and zips downward until landing with an explosion of light. The man who'd been pulling out well, she wasn't really sure. Nevertheless, the man who was pulling out something was very quickly sprawled out in the sand with his fellow crewmates gathering around him in concern. It was only when she dropped her arm that Carrie realized her 4 other companions were staring at her. So she spared them looks and asked, Can we get on with it and beat their asses now? Luffy put on a big smile. Yes. He spun on heel to face the remaining pirates, swinging his arm around in the semblance of a windmill as he rears himself up to attack. Zoro shared a look with Nami and Usopp, noting how roughened up they were, namely Usopp, and threw a thumb over his shoulder saying, You two go up the cliff, we'll handle it from here. Then he turns to Carrie and asks, Can you do to him what you did to me? Carrie stares at Zoro dumbly until she realizes what he was asking. Oh yeah, sure. Her hand warps with white smoke, and she quickly slaps Luffy on the back with a mumble of resistance, before dragging her hand away and watching her captain go rim-rod straight. Beat their asses, Captain. Versus answering her like any sane individual, Luffy just starts screaming as if he were a man who has nothing left to live for, and charges at the pirates below. The few brave enough to try approaching look like they've made more than a few poor life choices that landed them in this situation. Zoro and Carrie just quietly watch as their captain goes to town on the remaining pirates not already sat on their asses. The duo watch their captain charge forward, splitting the charging enemies. Luffy reaches their ship, which has a big cat on its bow, a comical sight that makes both observers double take, and hugs it. Is he? Zoro squints as he swears he sees the bow begin to bend and break under Luffy's strength. Note to self, Carrie says as her captain successfully tears off the bow and swings around to apparently use it as a giant mallet on the remaining pirates. Don't use that spell on Luffy again. Correction, Zoro tags on, brows rising as he watches the guy that Carrie had nailed with an eldritch blast earlier scramble up. Do use that spell on Luffy again. Often. Carrie purses her lips. Fair enough. Though, any semblance of amusement she was getting left her as her brows raise when watching the bow begin to tip in an uncontrolled manner. Ah shit, should have done Constitution. Huh. Both Zoro and Carrie watch as the bow bends and slams into the remaining enemies, resulting in screaming and crying while their captain is snoring beneath the bow. All parties stare. I think they're done now. Nami calls from behind them, apparently having too watched the whole slew of events go down. Yeah, we noticed. Zoro murmurs. Alright, so we can just wrap this up and, damn it, what are they, rabbits? Carrie glares at the two new cat-themed fighters that spawned out of seemingly nowhere. Carrie just whines in annoyance, leaning on her staff and just looking overall bored with the scenario. They're clearly cats. Zoro points out. Carrie glares at him. Shut up. She glares at the duo, rambling about being some of the best fighters. Their moves are unmatched, whatever. Carrie tuned them out before they even started talking. She shared a long look with Zoro. Do you mind if I just? Zoro stares at her for a few beats, then gestures for her to do as she must. Yeah, sure, go ahead. Cool. Carrie dismisses her staff at last, looking haggard, though at least now able to stand without keeling over. Throw me. Huh. Carrie snaps her head to Zoro. Throw me. Alright, damn. Quickly sheathing his swords, he makes fast work of figuring out the best way to toss the tiefling. Unfortunately, as it were, he had very little experience throwing people, so it was an awkward tangle of limbs where Carrie pulled herself into a ball to the best of her abilities and Zoro clutched her like an overly large basketball. Then without further ado, and realizing there was no good way to go about this, he decides to bowl her. Why? Carrie cries as she goes tumbling down the hill towards the two fighters who look very confused by the turn of events. I asked you to throw me. We'll work on it later. Zoro shouts, doing a very poor job of pretending he was confident in this odd plan. Screw you, Hilltop. Carrie cries as she finally slows to a stop right between the two men that look down at her in confusion. Carrie on her back eyes the pair of cat-themed men with a gigantic grin, teeth glinting, before both arms cross over her chest and dance with boiling black smoke. Surprise! She slams her arms into the ground, the black smog around her hands spreading in a quick dart to create a 10-foot radius of pure smoky darkness. Her smile turns feral as she whispers, Arms of Hadar. Tendrils of inky black abyss erupt from the void beneath them. Both men looked beyond alarmed at the massive tendrils, in no way prepared or ready for such an attack. The dark imposing forms large enough to grab some lingering watchers near the edge of the radius. Though the two clawed men were the primary targets and they were certainly regretting not treating her as a serious threat. Then, with a final writhe from the tendrils, they chucked those closest to them onto the ground, giving one last echoing crack before vanishing into the inky void where they originated from. The whirling mass of darkness disappearing right back into Carrie's awaiting palms. The tiefling puts on a cocky smirk before lifting her hands from the ground, hearing the satisfying sound of bodies collapsing. What the hell was that? The remaining enemies cried, looking beyond alarmed at the display of power. A tentative few even backed away. And now, their alleged leader said, the man staring at her through his tinted glasses, let's not start a fight we can't finish. You started it. Carrie points out, smirk growing to reveal the glint of fangs. Django. A voice cries, cutting through the post-beat down. All heads turn to find Klahadore. Wait, no. Kuro standing at the top of the hill. He stares down at them, loosely holding onto a duffel bag. He stares with contempt fit for royalty. What is the meaning of this? See Captain Kuro. The leader, or former leader, cries. He looks more afraid of his own captain than the little group of fighters. He swallows as if fighting past a rock in his throat, and strings together his thoughts. It seems our plan isn't as easy to accomplish as we had hoped. Kuro's face twists in annoyance. I can see that. He pushes his glasses further up the bridge of his nose, giving a long drawn-out and put-upon sigh. Seems I underestimated you then. He begins to unzip the duffel bag. His first mate looks alarmed at being brushed off so quickly. What, Captain? You aren't. Enough, Django. The man interrupts, reaching into his bag and digging around. His eyes slide to Carrie, who watches him with sharp attention. You have 5 minutes to wrap this up or... Carrie, seeing it as the best opportunity she was going to get, raises her arm without thinking, takes aim and grins. Got idiot. Red-hot light crackles in her palm. Eldritch blast. The shot that goes off rings in the pirate's ears, stumbling back, shielding their eyes. It's monstrous. Carrie just grins and bears the weight behind the blast, adjusting her stance to more firmly hold her weight as she finally swings her arm back down, gripping it to soothe the taut muscles. Her brows raise. Crit, she thinks, go figure. The spot where Kuro had once been standing now features him still standing in the same spot. Go figure, but now with a freshly burned hole where the front of his suit had once been. He is hunched over, looking alarmed and trying to save face, and Carrie honestly has to give him props for still standing after a blast like that. Unfortunately, her initiative was up, and who would have guessed it? Kuros was just starting. The man looks up, eyes glistening behind his glasses as he stares down Carrie with a look that can only be described as vengeful. "My turn," he hisses. Carrie blinks, and in that moment Kuro has moved to be directly in front of her. Startling, Carrie jolts back without thinking, and she would later thank her instincts because if she hadn't moved back she was certain the damage she took would be significantly worse than what she got. Those long claw-like blades strapped to his hands slash, tearing down and getting a quick stab in at Carrie. The sides sliced through her side as if cutting through butter. Carrie barks in alarm as the power behind the attack sends her flying back, eventually leaving a sizable dent in the bow of the ship, still serving her captain as a blanket. Sliding down the bow and collapsing in the sand, Carrie curls over her side with a hiss of pain. Hands slide to the long claw marks, pressing against the ripped flesh. She looks up with a grimace and wheezes, "I just get here and I get stabbed? Really? You'd think I'm no better than Zoro." "I heard that." Zoro calls down, waving his swords around in annoyance. Though she heard him call after her when she got hit, so she knew he was worried. She'd hold it over his head later. "I don't appreciate being interrupted," Kuro says, pushing his glasses up with the heel of his hand again. Carrie just glares at him. "Hypocrite much? You interrupted the party? We were having fun till you showed up." She gives a wicked grin and quickly turns her attention on the nearby pirates still eyeing her warily. They jolted her attention. Kuro bristles. "Do I need to stab you again to make you shut up?" With a snort, Luffy wakes up at long last, rubbing the sleep out of his eyes as he slurs, "What did I miss?" He takes a long look around before he double takes at the sight of Carrie slouched against the bow, hands stemming the pooling blood on her side. What happened? Why are you bleeding?" "Sir Tall Dark and Spooky over there doesn't know how to have fun," Carrie answered, nudging her head towards Kuro, who looked 2 steps away from combusting if he was ignored and or interrupted again. Slowly though, a mischievous grin curls onto Carrie's face. "Beat his ass, Captain." She leans close, takes one less bloody hand away from her side, and slaps her captain's shoulder. Resistance. Immediately, Luffy's pupils are blown. His whole body starts vibrating from the adrenaline rush as he jumps to his feet and starts screaming. A few poor suckers who'd been under threat of his last adrenaline burst look like they're about to cry. Luffy goes charging in without another word, screeching like a banshee as he sprints straight for Kuro. "Give him a good kick in the balls for me." Carrie shouts after him, though winces when her wound flares. Shrinking back, she places her palms back on her injury and blinks back stars. Emma, just take a quick rest." Carrie blacks out. Hey, you dead or what?" Carrie's face squishes as she slowly opens her eyes. She blinks past the apparent smoke and debris in the air as she eventually recognizes Nami as the one who'd woken her up. Takes her a few more seconds to properly realize what had been asked as she winces. "Gah, I wish." She presses a hand into her sticky side, pulling away and wincing at the tacky red on her palm. "Well, that's gonna leave a mark." "Glad you're alive," Nami drawls. She gives a clear look over of Carrie, apparently searching for something. Her shoulders slouch forward in relief, and also glad to see Kuro didn't nick you. Yes he did." "Was the stab wound not obvious?" Carrie asks smartly, looking around Nami briefly and immediately gaping when seeing an empty beach. Likewise, looking bewildered when spotting her captain passed out on the ground. What did I miss?" "The battle." Nami shrugs nonchalantly, slipping one of Carrie's arms over her shoulders and bringing them to a stand. Carrie can only gape. "I slept through the whole battle?" Her whole expression shudders in horror before going slack in misery. "I'm the worst." Nami just openly stares at Carrie as if she were an idiot. "Are you serious right now? I'm pretty sure the only reason that Luffy even managed to give Kuro the smackdown of his life is because of that weird spell you used on him. Plus you literally got stabbed and passed out from blood loss. That hardly qualifies as being called sleeping." The tiefling just grumbles. Shuffling up to the downed captain, Nami carefully settles Carrie beside Luffy, being mindful of both of their injuries and doing well to avoid putting any excess strain on them. Carrie hides her pain as well as she can, just sort of grinding her teeth and slouching in on herself by the time she's sat down on the ground. Her eyes rake over Luffy in concern, running a hand over his back to prestidigitate some of the grime away. Apparently her little cantrip stirred Luffy, as his eyes open and immediately lock onto Carrie. A bright grin spreads across his face as he cheers, "Carrie." Cracking a smile, Carrie greets, "Hey Luffy." Said boy sits up and gives her that sunny grin of his. "We won." "Yeah, I heard." Carrie grins back, though the reality makes her grin lose a bit of its shine. "Sorry I slept through most of it." A voice from behind them scoffs, "If you made me sit my ass down when I was stabbed, I doubt we'll judge you for sitting out of it when your ass got stabbed." Zoro trekked down the cliff side, his own plentiful scrapes and cuts on display. Carrie rolls her eyes. "Well yeah, but that was. If you say it's different I will and can beat your ass, stab wound or not." Zoro grouches. Once close enough, he swipes Carrie's hat off her head, earning a yell of offense. Zoro elects to ignore Carrie's indignity in favor of sticking his hand into the hat with furrowed brows, clearly focused. Then, his face smooths out in surprise as he pulls his arm out and comes back with a small roll of gauze. "It's cold in there." He plants the hat back on Carrie's head while he starts patching some of his smaller wounds. Carrie folds her arms as best she can and grumbles, Gimme that." Nami shouts, snatching the roll of gauze out of Zoro's hands. The swordsman cries out in annoyance while Nami ignores him and kneels at Carrie's side. "Raise your arms." While Carrie is getting her wounds addressed, there is a call from up the cliff, "Thank you." They all look up and find Usopp standing at the top, grinning down at them in earnest thanks. "If it weren't for you guys the village couldn't have been protected." "Come on," Zoro drawled, settling down beside Carrie. "You did your fair share of protecting too." "Same here." Luffy shouts from where he is spread like a starfish. "I got treasure out of this, so all in a day's work." Nami calls, grinning as she hugs a sack of treasure that Carrie just squints at, wondering who she robbed. Sensing it was her time to say something, Carrie pats at her bandaged wound with a smile before looking to Usopp and calling, "Another asshole got his ass handed to him, so all's right with the world." Usopp snorts at that and it pulls a big smile onto his lips. "Because of that, there's a decision I've made." All four of them share similar states of confusion. When they'd been told they were getting a ship, it seemed a little too good to be true to Carrie. Though now, standing in front of the small ship with a sheep on its bow, well, she was starting to believe it. Luffy was circling the ship eagerly, examining every nook and cranny on the outside before hopping to the deck and examining all he could there too. Nami was hauling her sack of treasure on the ship eagerly, likely going to find a hiding place for it. And Zoro was settled beside Carrie, just standing and staring with wide eyes. "Are you sure we can take her?" Luffy yells down, staring in awe at Kaya, the one who donated the ship to their cause. The new head butler stands nearby, little horns on his head that, after a pointed question from Carrie, were in no way tiefling related. The man smiles up at them, amused by their awe. "Just take care of her." Luffy continues grinning like an idiot, rushing back to the center deck and out of sight. Shaking her head, Carrie rolls her head towards Kaya. "Can't even begin to tell you how thankful we are for the going merry, was it?" Kaya dips her head in a nod. "No need, you've done enough for us in protecting our island." Carrie offers a big smile of thanks before turning and smacking Zoro's chest. "Help me up first, mate?" Rolling his eyes, Zoro starts for the ship, breathing like he was about to start talking but pausing when hearing something tumble down the cliff. Behind them, Carrie and Zoro turn curiously, only to boggle when seeing a round pack rolling down towards the beach. "Heads up," Zoro called, lifting a foot to brace. Carrie summoned her quarterstaff and aimed it in a similar manner. By the time the pack reached them, Usopp's face was the unfortunate recipient of both foot and pole alike. Zoro blinked. "About time you showed up, Usopp." Carrie grins in greeting, vanishing her staff and helping the boy right himself alongside his pack. "You're here." Usopp pauses. Then he notes Kaya on the beach and he can't help but put on a confident air, puffing up and throwing a thumb to his chest. "I've decided to officially set out." He wilts a little, before I change my mind." "I figured you'd do as much," Kaya says with a gentle smile, fond in all the right ways. Seeing that Usopp and Kaya were saying their goodbyes, Carrie slaps Zoro's chest to cue him in continuing to help her onto the ship, which results in a lot of awkward clinging as Carrie holds onto his back like a koala as Zoro scales the ladder. "You know," the swordsman grunts as he flips over the railing and lands on deck in a crouch. Carrie slides off his back while Zoro glares at her. "You could have climbed that yourself." "Nah," Carrie says belligerently, pointing to her still bandaged side. "Could have ripped my stitches." Carrie turns, electing to ignore Zoro's annoyance, taking a good look at the deck. She lets out an odd sound. "Nice?" She looks better up close. Carrie takes her time investigating the ship, peeking into the storeroom, galley, sleeping quarters, and all other nooks and crannies that caught her attention. Overall, the space felt small but homey. A good ship for an adventure like they'd be undertaking. By the time she crawled back onto deck, seeing Usopp standing with them, teary-eyed and excited, Carrie perks up. Oh hells yeah, new crew member. New captain. Usopp weakly attempts to correct. Crew member. Luffy corrects right back. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Support the writer. Don't forget to like, sub, share, and donate for more videos.